shout outs everybody tuning in. Welcome to our first Street Fighter 6 character crackdown series. All right, so similar to the Street Fighter 5 series, what we're basically going to do is we are going to go in depth with the character of the week. All right, we're going to start off with Dhalsim because Dhalsim is the character I've been playing the most by far since Street Fighter 6 is released. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the strengths, the weaknesses, and then the overall impressions that I have of the character. All right, show some examples in the game. It's gonna be pretty fast, nothing too crazy. Like, this isn't gonna be like a long-winded like the other conversational pieces that we have on stream, but this is gonna be informative for people that are using sim and for people that are also fighting against sim. Okay, so this is gonna be just helpful in many regards. All right, so let's begin. Let me pop up my notes. Let's start off with our strengths for Dhalsim. Okay, let's start off talking about his great range. All right, his pokes, as we all know, sim has amazing range, right? He can hit from pretty far compared to a lot of the casts. So you can consider like his pokes are like, you know how they say like fireballs are like, you know, extended pokes? His pokes are like shorter fireballs, basically, right? Which is kind of weird, but and they're pretty good. They are powerful, especially with the punish counter property that is applicable to some of the buttons. You don't get them on like your, you know, your mediums, right? But you get them on your heavies, so you get some pretty cool stuff. So for example, in previous Street Fighter games, Dhalsim would hit you from far, but he couldn't really convert, right? But now with the introduction of the drive system, he's able to do a lot of pretty crazy shit. So for example, like this, you can drive cancel stand heavy kick. So where people would make mistakes from really far and Dhalsim would get like measly punishes, like maybe stand fierce, you know, now he could do stuff like this, right? That's 315 before the level 3 hits, right? So now imagine, now this is gonna do 515 damage. Okay, so this is like one of Dhalsim's design flaws that he's had over many iterations of Street Fighter, was that he didn't really do a lot of damage, and like he didn't do burst damage off of straight hits, right? Now he can because of the drive engine, which is pretty dope. It's pretty sick. I think that is one of the reasons why I think he is going to be really strong. We'll talk about that later on, like when I get into my overall impressions, but has a large part to do with that in particular. He can just influence and be scarier from way further than before. You know, before he was just frustrating, he wasn't really scary. Now it's like he can be scary from far away. His offense isn't as great as Street Fighter 5 because he doesn't have the air gale, which gave him the, you know, those plus frames and stuff like that. He has like a great value Kmart version in the Yoga Comet, but this is 30 frames to start up. It's not reliable to like to bait throw techs and stuff like that. His offense isn't as scary as it used to be, but he is overall, I think, a stronger character because his neutral is just so much better for many of the reasons that I'm gonna list, and the main one I just said, right? Being able to convert. All right, next point. He has a vast zoning toolset to control neutral in a myriad of ways. So before, Sim was pretty like straightforward with his zoning. It was fireball, you know, EX fireball. This is Street Fighter 4, and he had his buttons, right? He had his buttons, his good pokes, whatever, right? And then in 5, he was introduced to Yoga Arch, right? But he lost his regular fireball, right? And then in 6, they gave him back the regular fireball, gave him the Yoga Comet, right? He still has his EX versions or whatever, right? And then the Yoga Comet is not Comet, the Yoga Arch. The Yoga Arch is very interesting because it functions like his V Skill 2 from Street Fighter 5, where it had the bouncing properties, right? So this is pretty sick because you can get it to go behind, right? So for example, you can do this, right? And it bounces towards your opponent. So you can get like some pretty tricky mix-ups and stuff like that, which have not really been explored yet because there's so much to the character, so much intricacies going on that you're not going to see that really fine-tuned probably until like later in the year, in my opinion. But then on top of him having, you know, just great buttons and stuff like that, he has one of the best anti-airs in the game in this. You know, typically when players would like neutral jump fireballs or jump empty jump fireballs from this range, not a lot of characters can really do something about it, especially when you've like committed to a movement or a recovery of a sort. But Dhalsim can actually cover that with this pretty easily. And if they get counter hit, he can convert and he can get a shit ton of damage off of that. Right, so he's stronger in certain areas and angles of his anti-air game because of the things that they've introduced with like his anvil, which he had in 5, but he didn't. I don't think he had that in 4. I'm pretty sure he didn't have that in 4. So the fact that he gets this on top of like all of the other great pokes that he gets for zoning, I think he's just a neutral powerhouse in my opinion. People are of course going to be like, oh, he's not that great because he's not offensive like he used to be. And when games first come out, offense is the first thing that people are going to focus on because it's all about putting people in situations they don't understand, right? And just running through people. That's what usually is strong at the beginning of a game. But then as the game becomes more stable, when you know people understand situations and ignorance isn't as like prevalent, then you start to notice that things slow down and the characters that are more stable are the ones that tend to be the top tier characters, right? So another thing that he has that's really, really godlike about his zoning, this is completely new, is his Yoga Comet. So he can now do a basically air fireball towards the ground, right? Which is pretty sick. So he has different speeds. They all go the same angle though, okay? And then he has an EX version, which when he does it, he's granted the ability to cancel out of it into teleport, right? So he can basically do a follow-up action afterwards. Whereas with the regular comments, once he commits to it, he can't do anything, right? I can't mash. See, like a mashing jab and nothing's coming out until you hit the ground, okay? But when you do EX, you can immediately move again, or you can rather not immediately move, but you have the ability to act afterwards, okay? So this is really good. This is really good for like frustrating people, especially when they are going by the typical rules of like a regular comment where they're like, oh, let me try to like trip guard punish, and then all of a sudden they walk into this or jump into this, or you know, I like to hit a lot of people when they try to jump over the fireball, they get hit by this, right? Super frustrating. And then of course, if somebody's in Burnout, this is pretty good too because you can just transition right into like mix up, right? So this is pretty good. Yeah, you can do this into dive kick. Okay, you can do this into this also, right? It's pretty good. You can do this, you can do this, right? And you can teleport again. So that's pretty sick, right? And you can just TP away. And I think that's a sequence that people have to start like really abusing with Dhalsim, because most people when they do this, they just commit to like one thing and they just go for it. But like doing something like this it's pretty obnoxious. Okay, so his zoning is just really good. You know, of course drive impact is a thing that you do have to worry about, but Dhalsim has answers to that with his zoning tools. He has crouching medium punch, which is cancelable, and he has stand heavy kick, which you can like hyper delay. Like look how late I'm doing this. This is, let me put this on block. See how late I did that? So like when you throw this out in neutral, you can just easily react. So a lot of times I don't even think they're gonna drive impact, but because the window is so wide on the cancel here, you could just easily drive impact it. Okay, so this is like my go-to when I'm like not really sure of how they're gonna approach on the ground, but I know that they're not gonna block. This is what I usually will go for. And then on block, you just cancel the fireball, keep zoning, right? Or you can do Yoga Arch, right? And Yoga Arch is pretty strong because once it goes off, it goes off the screen and you don't know which version it is unless you pay attention to the angle of how he fires, like right here, right? Before it leaves the screen. If you see the angle, then that's how you can tell which version it is. But in the heat of battle, if you're not really paying attention to that, you're gonna be like kind of mind fucked, right? Like you'd be like, wait, what was that? And maybe run into it. So I see a lot of people just randomly get hit by it because they don't expect it or they forgot that it's a thing, right? Because usually when fireballs leave the screen, they dissipate, they don't come back. Well, not Mr. Dhalsim. Next point, he's able to convert off of stray pokes in neutral from far distances, which we just covered with the whole drive rush system, right? But not even just that, he also has some pretty cool stuff with like super, right? So he can do this, and that would combo. Let me see, put it on block after first hit. So if you do light, this is pretty good for like a whiff punish. This is too far, and this is gonna whiff, right? So like as a whiff punish, you'd want to use this. And you can kind of hit confirm it, I'm pretty sure. So the way you would lab that, you just set it to random block, and then you would just do this and just drift buffer it on reaction. Yep, see? So you can hit confirm it. It's pretty good. So he has a wide array of anti-air options. So when you have a lot of anti-airs, it can be very frustrating for somebody to get in, because somebody might recreate a position or a spacing to try to specifically counter that one anti-air you keep hitting them with. And then when you change it up by using something completely different, it could just get people really like salty, irritated, frustrated. And you know, when you play Dhalsim, ideally that's what you want. You want people to get frustrated because they just run into stuff, right? One of the things that you'll see a lot of Dhalsim players do for an anti-air is back medium punch, which is pretty decent. It's not my favorite anti-air, only because there is an extended hurt box on the first active frame where a character like Ken, for example, can just let me show you guys a really good example of why I don't like this as an anti-air against certain characters. Right, okay, there you go. All right, so if you are not committed to like any sort of recovery, right, you can anti-air this. But let's say if I were to whiff, like, I don't know, like a jab or something, right? This is pretty much guaranteed, okay? Whereas I could do this and beat this every single time with something like back heavy kick. So back heavy kick is what I like to use for like button scrambles. If I think that there's a possibility that he's gonna jump in the middle of me like doing delayed jabs, right, defensively, this is my go-to, only because I don't want to interact with that first extended hitbox on the back medium punch. But if I'm not anti-air, if I'm not committing to anything, right, then this isn't a bad option, because you can just cancel it, right? This isn't safe. He can land, he can just react and do EXDP or reversal super or anything like that, but it is drive impact safe. Okay, so you can't drive impact here. You'll be able to like block it, therefore drive impact back. Okay, you also have Yoga Blast, so even the light version of this is pretty good. It's the fastest version that he has access to for anti-airs. Okay, but the hitbox isn't that massive, so typically what you'd want to use is the medium version, which is 3 frames slower, but it's a little bit more stable. Okay, and then not only that, if you hit, you can convert into some pretty good damage. That's gonna whiff, but you can do 408 damage. That's pretty good for an anti-air. 40%, it's pretty nutty, I'm not gonna lie. I think that's actually ridiculous. And I didn't invest that many drive gauges. This was pretty easy, wasn't that hard, and that's against one of the best jumping attacks in the game. So you could pretty much almost guarantee that as an option against a lot of characters, you know? It's pretty good. Of course, from further ranges, he has let's do jump forward. So if I'm like way further like this, this anti-air is really good for people that like to empty jump over fireballs. And if he gets counter hit, then you can convert. So if like, let's say he gets counter hit here, you can do stuff like this. Let me see. You can do this, which is pretty good. That's gonna do like what, 370? Yeah, 370, 37%. Nothing too crazy, but that's a good way to like end the round if you need it, right? It's not a bad option. You can get like beefier stuff with if you're close enough. Let me see. Do stuff like that. So that would be like 300 if I do heavy. Yeah, basically like 300. Yeah, so he can convert pretty well from a lot of anti-air situations. I think he's really on point with discouraging things in this game. The only thing he might have a hard time with discouraging is drive rush, but that's like a universal thing. I don't think anybody gets discouraged because you're only investing 1 bar, right? If drive rush was like raw drive rush was like 2 bars, or if it didn't leave you plus on block, something like that, then I think he wouldn't be. I think he would be able to like discourage it with a certain style of play. But honestly, for the most part, you just have to like, once you stop drive rush, you just have to expect that the player is willing to do it again because it's just so strong. And for the likelihood of somebody stopping it every single time, that means that they're taking away from other aspects of their play. You know, like maybe their anti-airs, maybe their whiff punishes, maybe their punishes on block and stuff like that, right? Because it might be too tunnel visioned on it. Okay. All right. So he has high damage anti-air conversions with meter, which I've shown. Access to the most unique movement toolset in the game, in my opinion. So he has float. Okay, flow is pretty strong because when you think about it, when he's in the air like this, it basically neutralizes a lot of your mid and low pokes, like pretty much all of your low pokes and most of your mid attacks. All right, unless they have some sort of trajectory aiming up towards the air, you can basically neutralize it. Right? You can just completely avoid it. So this is like really strong. Just when you know that your opponent is fishing for things like, for example, Ken with low forward into drive rush, right? Just floating and then waiting, you know, or jumping back really quick and floating preemptively and then catching the recovery of the low forward is really strong. Okay. And then when it hits, you know, you can get these type of conversions. Okay. And of course, if you want to invest more meter, you can get even beefier punishes, potentially ending rounds depending on how much health your opponent has. So then he also has, you know, his teleport. Teleport's pretty good. It's not as far as in Street Fighter 5 and 4. He only goes about like a character's distance away, right? Maybe a character and a half length away. So in order for me to teleport full screen, I literally have to do it like 4 times. But it is instant. It is an instant gap closing technique if you want to get next to your opponent. So if I do forward and punches, right, I am right next to them. Okay. If you are full screen though, you can't cross up. You have to be a little bit inside of full screen. So like right here, I'll cross up, see? Which is pretty cool because that means you can come up with some fucked up mix-ups. All right, if you do the kick version, you're always in front. I don't think you're always, are you ever in throw? Yeah, you are in throw range if you do that. Okay, but the thing is when you do this, if somebody back rolls a lot of your knockdowns, you won't be close enough for pressure. So a lot of Sims teleports for Oki are going to be the punch version so you can be close to him. All right, but you want to be careful though. You don't want to teleport behind somebody if you're low on drive gauge and it's going to put you in the corner. So these are things you have to be very mindful of. Okay, very important. He has dive kick. Dive kick I love because you can go over fireballs and you can reposition. Okay, you can reposition like this instead of just committing to a dash. You can do things that will throw people off like this with flow, right? You can go, right, stuff like that. Okay, you can just randomly attack from the float position, right? And then of course, like we were talking about with the introduction of Yoga Comet, and he could EX and go out of it, right? You can do this and then you can just TP out, dive kick afterwards. He's very mobile, he's very fun, he's fluid, he's janky in weird ways. Like it's kind of hard to pin him down if you don't understand these things. Okay, so I like his movement. His dash is really slow though. His backdash is one of the fastest ones in the game, ironically enough. I think the fastest being 22 frames, and he's in the second fastest category of backdashes, but his regular dash is really slow. Okay, but in this game, for the most part, drive rushes are going to be your main go-to, and you're not really gonna care for regular dash in a lot of situations unless you get like guaranteed Oki off of it, so you don't have to invest the meter, or you're just trying to reposition behind some sort of advantage. So for example, fireball, I could dash behind it and I'm closer, I've repositioned, right? I wouldn't want to reposition without that fireball though, because then I can potentially get hit by a poke or something like that, right? It's very slow. It's a lot of commitment behind that dash. You got to be very careful. So he has the ability to drive, chip, and burn out opponents from much further than the rest of the cast. So this is one of my reasons for why I think he is a potential top tier character, is that most characters, when they burn you out, they got to be in like pressure range, right? Especially if they don't have a fireball. But Dhalsim is a threat from this range, which is pretty crazy to think about, right? So you're able to influence your opponent from this range. So when somebody is in burnout, they are more likely to look to parry this, right? Or they're going to try to jump from this range, whereas other characters, they would feel like they can breathe. Oh, let me just chill for a little bit, let my drive gauge replenish, right? But in this example, if we had Ken over here with 1 bar, now he's like, yo, I don't want to get burnt out, right? Because he does a lot of drive chip off of his fierces. Okay, like a ton. Okay, so you are more of a threat, especially because of the burnout strategy that Sim can implement from further away. So it makes people just take more risks naturally. So if you're aware of meter management, then you can capitalize on this. You know what I'm saying? So it's pretty significant. His strategy doesn't change too drastically if he's in burnout himself. So think of it like this, right? Ideally, what does everybody want to do against Dhalsim? They want to get in, right? So if I'm here, I'm still playing my game, right? It's still the same. That nothing really changes. I can still anti-air. I can still, like, you know, keep you out if I'm on point. I can still punish you for you know, making mistakes. It's just the thing is I don't have the freedom of using an EX move to like create some sort of like chaos, right? I just have to play a lot more solid and straightforward for whatever duration of time until I get it back, right? But then the thing is, remember what we talked about with his range. Now consider this. If I'm in burnout, look how fast I can get my meter back from just hitting a couple of buttons, right? So you can't even, you almost are incentivized to go in because it's Dhalsim and because he can get his burnout replenished quicker, right? You feel like, damn, I really have to go in, and that opens up the aspect of the game that Dhalsim watches, which is people overcommitting, becoming overzealous and excited about getting in and getting started. It's totally fine with me because now you're going to run into all of my buttons and help me replenish my meter faster. So when you're in burnout, it's really important to keep track of how does my opponent want to close the gap. So if I'm playing a Ken, it's very likely he's going to want to do Dragon Slash from further away, right? Why? Because if I block it, he's even more advantageous. He's going to be +5 at minimum, right? Because of the additional 4 frames of recovery of advantage against burnout players on recovery, right? So then my focus should be fixated on countering that. So you have to be very mindful when you're in burnout. Doesn't mean you can slack off, but if you are attentive, you can still thrive off of it. I think the good characters in this game are the characters that can still play their game despite being in burnout. Characters that rely too much on EX, they're the ones that suffer a lot, my opinion. Okay? All right, so the furthest throwing distance, not in terms of range, but I think this is the furthest throw in the game. This, look how far he throws you. That is obnoxious. That is insane. And the reason why this is insane is because consider this. Look where we are, right? If I do this, okay, look where he is. If Ken blocks, if he blocks a button like a fierce wall splat, that's insane off of a throw. So if I throw you from mid screen, you are literally a button into drive impact away from wall bounce or wall splat, which is pretty crazy. So I think that's very dangerous because people might not think about it like, oh, Dhalsim doesn't really have crazy offense. That's true, but if he burns you out, this character can get obnoxious very fast. All right, like he turns it up a notch. He's one of the best burnout characters in the game, in my opinion. And then now I didn't realize this till recently, how far that throw puts your opponent towards the corner. So that's like a recipe for a disaster. If somebody masters that strategically, then you'd be able to just get people in burnout so quickly. And when you burn them out, they're already towards the corner, basically. And then now people are going to start panicking. And then, you know, when people panic, that's when Dhalsim thrives, right? But the problem is when the game is new, people are trying to experiment. So you'll see Dhalsim players trying to do stuff instead of chilling out for a second to pay attention to your opponent, because everybody's trying to try stuff. Everybody's trying to learn. So when you typically try to learn, you do things selfishly, right? Like you're not being attentive towards what your opponent wants to do. You're just kind of like, oh, let me practice this thing specifically. And then a lot of scrambles happen because of that. But as the game stabilizes, you're going to see slower, more methodical play, and people are going to be more attentive, paying more attention, asking more questions instead of speaking more. You know what I'm saying? And you're going to see that this character's going to get stronger as the meta develops. All right, he has some of the most damaging stun combos in the game. So if you guys have not seen this, this is pretty crazy. He can basically he can basically just erase Ken's health here. $618 damage, or 62% basically rounded up. Okay, it's pretty powerful, I'm not gonna lie. So you see how all these things kind of add up? They just like go into one another, they flow into the next thing, right? So if you get this situation, this is terrifying, right? And this is not even considering how much health did they already lose before they got cornered, because you know they're probably trying to get in. How much health did they lose if they got chipped in Burnout before you did this, right? How much damage did they take trying to avoid the drive impact, which is another thing, right? Or from getting thrown and stuff like that. Because usually when people focus on drive impact, it opens up other things, like other holes in their defense, right? Like with anything, naturally. Then you take advantage of it in its own unique way. So if somebody's looking for drive impact, maybe they're more susceptible to throw. Maybe they're more susceptible to jump-ins. Maybe they're more susceptible to shimmies, because instead of doing delay jab when they were confident, now they're like, oh, they panic and they throw, right? Because usually when people are emotional and they panic, they resort to teching a lot. So that's something that you will discover as you are put in these situations more and more. So Sim, really good there. High mix-up potential with Yoga Arch. This is crazy. I'm not like the amount of stuff that you could do off of this is just absurd. Like I haven't mastered this, but like this is just obnoxious, right? And then it's like, especially if somebody's in Burnout, this is like a travesty. So it's something that you typically you want to avoid. You'll see a lot of people, when you put this on the screen, they're going to try to drive impact you because they don't want to deal with this. If they have meter, they'll parry it. They don't care, right? But even then, that's still dangerous because it allows you the opportunity to basically close the gap, right? And when you can close the gap, we do what we just talked about, right? Which is this. See? And you see how that flows into the next sequence, and then we start to get closer to that end goal of getting the burnout and then getting the stun combo, right? Or capitalizing on their desperation to avoid the drive impact. All right, so that's kind of like the fork in the road once you get there. Like, how are you going to handle or manage their burnout habits? Okay. He has access to side switch combos or side switch Oki with the advantage typically. So this is another reason why he's pretty good. The best characters are able to do this. So for example, let's say I am cornered and, you know, Ken gets in on me, right? Ken gets in on me and I do this and I have advantage, plus 18, right? Off of a straight hit. So I don't even have to use that much meter. I honestly can just do that. A plus 3 throw range, right? If I want to guarantee it though, I would probably have to invest the 3 bars just to make sure that I am in range, right? Okay. Or see, and then also he has it off of drive impact, which is pretty significant. Okay, so if he's close enough, that can combo, right? So let's say they so if you're not close enough there, let's say you hit him, right? If they do drive impact, he would be closer to you. So let me actually make him do drive impact. See, he's closer to me, right? So this should, see, it's pretty good. Almost 300 damage, and you get a side switch, which is pretty good. But let's say, you know, you're not sure it's gonna hit. You can just do this instead. Oops. You can drive rush after this. You can do this if you want to guarantee it, right? Or you can do something like this. You just have to drive rush it. I think crouch jab would work instead. Yeah, so you can crouch jab here instead. Okay, so you can do something like that. Only 2 bars too. Not bad. Not bad at all. And then of course you could link it into probably even crazier stuff like maybe, I don't know if you could do like level 2 or anything like that. I haven't really labbed this like that. Oh, you can level 3. That's pretty cool. Do that. I'm pretty sure you go level 2 after this. Yeah, not bad. 300. It's not bad. Okay, I think the best characters in the game have access to something like this, being able to literally just flip the match off of a straight hit like that. That's pretty cool. And not only does he do it in like a linear way, but he has a lot of options from doing it. You know, I don't even have to spend the bar like that. I could just do this and then I go for mix. See, I could do something like that, something really dangerous. Okay, so like imagine I could do that if somebody tries to parry, right, in anticipation of the EX yoga art. So there's a bunch of options that he has, and I think, again, if you have something like that, it's so dangerous to approach you if you are on point defensively. Because if somebody introduces delays, it's usually to beat your delay, right? But when somebody introduces delay, it opens themselves up to potentially getting jabbed out of their pressure and stuff like that, right? If somebody keeps it tight all the time, there's no real guess, because if they keep it tight, you can just delay tech and it beats framed, it beats meaties, it beats throws, right? So they have to introduce a delay artificially into their pressure, so that way they can expose your delay, but then that also exposes them. See, so that's like how defense works in this game. So even though Dhalsim doesn't have like an invincible DP or anything like that, he still can be, you know, very annoying to deal with if they have really good defense, especially if they can capitalize off of hits like that. All right. So it's a lot of strengths. I think he's really good. He's a solid character. All right. So let's talk about weaknesses. So some of his weaknesses, he has really weak like attack properties, in my opinion. And the reason why is because his stand jab is his fastest button, but the range on it is pretty bad. All right. So let's say if we're cornered, he can basically shimmy me and I can't really contest this with this. I have to do this. The problem with this is 5 frames. Okay, so all right, so this is not that great. Okay, so he can get thrashed pretty easily if you're not on point with how to use your light attacks. If you don't understand these when and where to use one over the other. Typically, to keep it simple, you just want to use your stand light when they are closer to you, and if there is any sort of range, then use your crouch jab and try to cancel into something to get you pushback. But you have to be careful because stuff like that can happen, right? So this is where, like, if you know stuff like that's happening, then you could just do stuff like this. Okay, and this is pretty good because then you can punish counter throw, and now he's in the corner and takes 220%. You hear me say 200 a lot. I know it's 2000, but I'm still using like Street Fighter 5 and Street Fighter 4 metrics when the health bars were 1000 instead of 10,000. So not only that, he needs meter for defensive lights into knockdowns, right? So he can't really reliably get any sort of knockdown, right? Because this doesn't combo, this doesn't combo into EX, this doesn't combo, this doesn't combo into EX. The only things, this doesn't combo into blast, this combos into blast, but if he's too far, that happens. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to use EX. Okay, but the problem with this is, well, if they're crouching, none of this matters because, right? So then what you have to do is you have to use one of 2 things. You have to use EX Fireball, okay, which is cool, right? You get the +10. That's not bad, right? You can go on the other side, immediate crouch and heavy punch, or down back heavy punch rather. Or what you could do is you cancel like that and then you get out. Both situations require meter. So if you do not have meter, this is where it sucks with sim, because then it's like, well, how do I get my knockdown if I don't have this meter, right? Well, you're kind of shit out of luck. And if you hit with regular fireball, you're -2. So if you're in Burnout, let's pretend we're in Burnout, right? And I get this, I can't do anything after this. There's nothing really for me to do. It's just I have to use it as like a spacing trap. Okay, basically you don't get rewarded as much as, say, as a Ken or a Luke, who if they hit a jab they can confirm and then go into DP, get a knockdown and get away from the corner, you see? So it's, you have to be very like on point defensively, because sometimes you don't have the meter to really change advantages in the situations that you find yourself in, so it can get pretty rough. He can struggle versus dive kick character tactics. So characters like Cammy that have dive kicks that hit really low at Dhalsim's feet. We'll give you an example. Okay, there you go. So he has a hard time against this. If you're not on point, this will get stuff like that, right? You have to be super on point. See, even there I try to react to it. If you're super early, you can beat it, but that means you have to be more committed to looking for it, which will then open you up to drive rush and to hooligan or spinning knuckle. All right, so you have to be like really on point. Okay, what you can do is you can like try to EX blast, but if you don't have the meter, kind of screwed here. Okay, if you're not fast enough, that will happen. But one of the underrated anti-airs that he has, strangely enough, is back medium kick. Back medium kick is actually really good. 7 frames too. And see, even if we trade, look how far she goes. I'm pretty sure I could probably raw teleport. Yeah, so you can just raw teleport here actually. I'm plus 26, so it's not bad. It is an option, but you have to be careful because if they regular jump, right, you have to react. Like if they do regular jump or if they do delayed dive kick, this is all of this starts because of this dive kick. If this dive kick didn't really exist, then it's like shit, you know. What's up, Greg? Yeah, this is a situation he's in a lot, especially against her. All right, so if I have bar, I can do EX. But it doesn't really get anything off of that. Yeah, I can't even. Can you trade maybe? That's too slow. Maybe slide. If a kick slide will convert. Nope, too slow. Nope, that's too slow also. Just stand medium kick and just take the space. Just try to reset. Not bad. Fuck it. It works. This would be funny if this comboed. How about it? Can you maybe heavy super? Oh, okay. That's pretty sick. I didn't know that. Okay, that's pretty good. That's a good option. Plus 29, so you can't teleport afterwards because you teleport's 39 frames, so you'll be minus 10. But it's not the end of the world, especially if they, well, they're not gonna back roll in that situation. They're probably gonna quick rise because they want to get back in, right? But even then you can just like dash, get the fuck out. Not bad. It's pretty good, pretty solid. He has no access to level 1 super invincibility, so this is literally free. There's nothing that he can do other than to guess. Why is it not sweeping? Okay, so I'm gonna try to do bodied. Okay, so if I do not have level 2, all 3 versions of my level 1 get washed. Nothing I could do. Okay, so you have to rely on parry and then, like, you know, reading their pressure strings and knowing they're doing something that is punishable with drive reversal, or if you know that they're autopiloting and doing something that is punishable by drive impact, then you could do that too also. Right. But if you have level 2, you can use it, but it only really works against standing. Okay, if she crouches, and then you literally could just wait and then just throw him on recovery. Some people get really greedy and they try to like combos and then they get hit by the super, and it's like, bro, why'd you do that? You should have just threw him. It was just take the guaranteed damage if you didn't lab it. But you should go into training mode and lab and find solutions for it. Okay, and of course if I have level 3, I can level 3. All right, so those are my only real 2 Invincible Reversal attacks are the level 2, which you can just crouch, do crouching meaties. If he ever has level 2 or less, if he has 1, doesn't matter, but if he has level 2, just do crouching meaties and you won't get hit. And then just wait for him to let go of the fireball, then throw him. Don't throw him until you see him let go of the fireball, okay? Then you just throw him and then you punish counter him and he has to eat that. Level 3, you gotta guess. That's everybody, right? Okay, so he's susceptible to drive impact with his strongest pokes. So some of his best pokes would be stand medium punch, is pretty good, 14 frames. It's really fast. Spun's actually pretty fast, and covers a great distance. Stand fierce is really good too. This is 16 frames. It's pretty telegraphed, so a lot of people will try to like parry it, but yeah, these will definitely get washed by this, like pretty much. Okay, if I'm like not paying attention, these get washed. Okay, what else is another one? Stand medium kick. Stand medium kick gets washed. Yeah, down heavy punch can get washed. See, like that. Okay, stand fierce. All right, so then you want to, of course, resort to using the cancelable button so you can avoid this, but it's just something you have to be mindful of. Okay, he does have answers. He has the crouching strong, right? But these just don't have the range of like a stand medium punch or the drive chip like a stand fierce, right? So these buttons are really good for the purposes that they serve, but in terms of like antagonizing your opponent, I think these are the better buttons, because these are the buttons that are more enticing. Crouching medium punch isn't as enticing because you know it's cancelable, right? So people don't, when you play good players, they know it's cancelable, they don't really care about it because they're like, yeah, nah, fuck that shit, I'm not dealing with that. When they see this, they see this, and they see this, they see this, then they're like, okay, you know, now I'm gonna try to do a drive impact or something like that. You can space it out so that like you can body them, right? For example, something like that. But you have to be very careful. Okay, if you know your spacing, then yeah, you can like kind of trap them or like trick them into it. And get some pretty good damage off of that. Not bad for 3 bars. Okay. All right, next. He has a lot of recovery on his best pokes, which allow for pretty easy whiff punishes and jumping threats. Okay. So if he does this a lot, for example, you know, you can just simply whiff punish it. So if I'm playing, let me swap characters. So I will play Cammy, and then I will put Dhalsim on the other side, and I will record Dhalsim doing this. You can whiff punish it pretty easy. Okay. Level 3. Could do this. Okay. Pretty sure I can go to level 1 after this, right? Oh, okay. I don't really know how to play Cammy in this game, so you got to be careful. You can't really autopilot stuff, because when his buttons whiff, you will get whiff punished by good players. Rightfully so, because his buttons are so good that it's actually hard to whiff with his buttons. Like if somebody's jumping, that's different, but if somebody's on the ground and you're whiffing your buttons, you are not paying attention. You are just autopiloting like a madman, to be honest. You know, like you're really not paying attention. So if you whiff, you deserve to get punished, and that's coming from a sim player. I'm a sim main now, right? So I can say these things. So yeah, like you can even sweep it, right? Sweep it, go for pressure or whatever. Probably even get like safe jumps off of it. I don't know. Okay, but it's something you gotta be really mindful of. And some of the buttons have so much recovery in fact that you can punish them on block. I'm gonna show you, for example, this one. Oops. right, so imagine you just dive because of this. That shit is tragic. I'm not gonna lie. So maybe you could do like a drive. Yeah, you can even do that. Okay. Oh, there's no 4-frame DPs in this game, right? Yeah, so you can a lot of characters can literally just block this and jab punish this, which is pretty tragic. It's pretty tragic. And then let's talk about the other buttons. So then you have like, so let's say if I play Luke, right? If you play Luke, you can do this. So the recovery on his pokes, it can be kind of tragic, not just like on whiff, but on block, as you're gonna see here. Even on hit, and I can show an example of that in a second. But let's say Dhalsim is going to do this. On block, it's 11 frames. Minus 11. If I'm close enough, this is a guaranteed punish. Guaranteed. You have to hold that. Which is pretty sad. Not gonna lie. Okay. That's pretty disturbing. So Cammy, for example, if I go back to Cammy, I'm pretty sure I can just level 3 this, right? Let me see. Yep, she can just level 3. So I don't know how far she can do it. Oh, yeah. So pretty much from max distance. That sort of looks like. Let me see. Yep. Max distance, so you cannot do that. You will get bodied. Okay. So that is something that you have to be aware of. Then you have crouch heavy punch. Pretty sure it's the same thing. Minus 12, so same thing, you know? It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. So you have to be like really cognizant of what your opponent's character has access to based off their meter, because a lot of characters might have something that can punish something like this. Okay, so just look for it, just investigate. Not every character, I don't imagine Zangief has anything obviously right to do anything about that, but like, you know, Cammy, Luke, maybe like a Ryu with level 1 super. Those are things that are worth labbing and figuring out. Okay, and maybe sometimes you don't have something that can guaranteed punish, but maybe there's a specific tool or a special that can help you close the distance and get into that range where you're effective. Because when you play Dhalsim, you don't need to always hit him, you just need to get close. So sometimes you want to use his frame data against him to close the gap, you know? So that's a way of doing that. Okay, so now on hit, the thing about Sim, that this goes into the recovery thing too, is a lot of times he's negative on hit, right? So look, even stand fierce -5, right? Stand medium kick -2, stand medium punch -2, right? Crouch heavy punch I think is -1. Yeah, see, like, so he's negative on a lot of stuff. Crouch medium punch is 0. Stand light kick is +2. Down back medium kick is -3. Back medium kick is +3. Yeah, so like a lot of his best tools he's negative, so like it's actually very unsafe for him to do back-to-back normals. So if I know a Dhalsim player is autopiloting something like this, for example, right, all you have to do is you literally do something like this. You just find a button that can interrupt it. All right, so let's say something like that, something like that. What is that? +11. Uh-oh, you know what that means. That should work. Bruh. Imagine you basically ate 48% for doing that. You gotta be very careful. You can't be autopiloting. When you do shit like this, it's because you know your opponent is mentally frazzled and they're sitting still, or you're trying to entice them to take the risk. Okay, because you got to be very, very important, because stuff like that can happen. So maybe she has other options. Maybe she could do like forward heavy kick. Maybe, let me see. Yeah, she could do that. Back a punish. Okay, you can't really like just be mindless about the buttons that you press, because he's negative on a lot of it, even non-hit. So imagine on block, right? So you don't really need to panic against this character. I think a lot of people just tend to panic against him for whatever reason. All right, so now let's talk about the overall experience that I've had with Sim. Okay, so I see Sim as a long-term top tier character, one who becomes increasingly stronger as the game stabilizes and the meta becomes more concrete. He seems to be an anti-meta character where he can play around the meter and avoid the repercussions of being in Burnout really well. On the flip side, he is one of the best characters at drive chip tactics and becomes a tyrant in the corner versus opponents in Burnout. To master a character like Dhalsim requires being mindful of the intentions of your opponent whenever you attempt risky moves, and also maximizing your punishes whenever they make mistakes. It's equally as important to slip out of challenging spacings and situations to not only minimize the risk / the chances of losing engagements, but also simultaneously frustrating your opponent into becoming overzealous. So he isn't forceful as a character in terms of forcing you into situations. He forces you to respond to that's what he does. He doesn't force you into a mix-up per se, or these really like insane, like, you know, pressure situations, unless you're in Burnout, of course. But he is more so going to force you to respond to what he does, because he has the ability to access contact with the opponent from such far ranges. Okay, but if you are mindful of the frame data, of the, you know, the recovery speeds, of the hitboxes of some of his moves, also the spacings of the things he wants to do, his meter management, then it's not as scary as you think. But I still think he's a really good character. He's just a character that's going to be piloted by the player. You know, he doesn't pilot the player. The player is the one that's piloting him. Okay, so he's not like a character you just pick up then you start winning with. You have to be a really strong player to do well with him. Okay, there goes my character Crackdown. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys enjoyed the video, like, comment below, subscribe, of course. Let me know what you'd like to see for the next character. Give me some ideas of a character I can take to master, and we will break them down, all right, to the best of my abilities, and help people that use the character or need help playing against the character. Cool beans. Peace.